All right, we are live. So, hi everybody out there in Facebook land. So, I am Marcia Civic with BeProvided Conservation Radio, and I am excited today. Today's a little different kind of presentation. We're actually going to be having Allyson Miller, the founder of ORECAT, as you can see her here. So, and she's going to be presenting about Oregon Cougars. So ORECAT actually stands for, I should say, is Oregon Cougar Action Team. So sorry for the stumble on that. So, so
On
it, and Allyson is the founder. She's been doing amazing work, bringing awareness to the status of cougar in Oregon, and also we're going to talk today about that, along with how cougars are actually mitigating controlling ticks, and how they can help prevent Lyme disease. And of course, how they can help us with our own human well-being. It's always wonderful to have a cougar in our lives. So, anyways,
yeah.
we're going to be, she's going to do this wonderful presentation. She just finished her second master's degree, and this was some of her work that she has done, and she's going to present that, and we're going to take questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, you can just type them into the comment section on Facebook, and we will answer them at the end. And yeah, and just say hi. If you're online listening, just post and say hi. And again, I'm going to introduce Allyson Miller. So thank you for joining us, Allyson. So,
Oh, I'm very excited. Very, very excited. I think you have been doing an amazing job for many, many conservation communities, and I appreciate you so much.
thank
And
you.
I appreciate this opportunity. And no, I'm not a cougar. I'm married. So I thought I could.
Yeah, I guess I should have clarified that, right?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not. However, I want to share with you a little bit about how I started ORECAT, just real quickly. Most important thing in life, whatever you do, whatever you stand for, you need to understand the bigger picture, where we started from, how we got to where we are, and is that good for us? And so when I grew up in Oregon on a 7,000 acre working cattle ranch in the 1950s, and the ecologies were stunningly gorgeous and quite a bit different than they are now in Oregon. I watched these ecologies that changed, and I understood from my father and the books of Aldo Leopold that were on our bookshelves as a child that I read, that it was the mitigating services of the cougar, the wolf, and the bear that kept our ecologies safe. But we no longer have the grizzlies. And at that time, we no longer had the wolf, but we had the cougar. So I set out with passion to start something I really wasn't prepared to do. But I'm going to tell you, if you're not prepared either, do it anyway. I started out with a passion and started Oregon Cougar Action Team, totally naive of politics, totally naive of the science of cougar, the social, ecological, environmental interactions that cougar have provided humans for thousands of years, which is why they have 86 names, which we'll talk about later. But I started out with a passion. For many years, it was passion that drove me. And I learned as I was going along. But one day at state legislature, after years of testifying against the same type of hound hunting bills, I sat there and my passion drove me over the cliff. And we've all been there. And I started telling the senators how stupid, 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 stupid this bill is. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there, I'm going, I'm stupid. It was an epiphany. And I said, I don't have enough resources within myself to be here. I need to go back to school to get educated on the topic of cougars. And I know they mean more than just hound hunting. I know they've done more for us than this. And what a gift to go back to Oregon State University. Dr. Robert Bechta was my mentor, and this was our journey. So let's start with a slide here.
Okay.
And I hope to give you all an epiphany, because epiphanies are more grounding than passion, I will tell you. Let's start with the slide, and I'm off.
Yeah, and I want to explain. This is your beautiful artwork, so I hope you talk about this, and we'll get going.
Uh,
So
this artwork depicts the 86 names of cougar. How did they get the 86 names? They are the only species in the world who have 86 names. It's because
oops.
elders in the communities of Native indigenous communities, and also your Americans recognize the higher valuations of cougars' benefits for human well-being. They impact our social, ecological, and economic well-being. Those are the three tiers of human well-being. Later on, you can come back to this and email me and tell me how many animals you find. Cougar are a keystone umbrella species, which represents human well-being in this piece of pen and ink that I did. So look closely at this, find all the species, find where the humans are, and let me know what you find. Next slide, please. Okay, and now in the United States, cougar used to encompass the whole entire continent, and they did so for thousands of years. They are a living legacy from the Pleistocene period, and they helped design, along with the cougar, along with the grizzly and the wolf, Oregon's ecologies that we call home today. So cougar actually, along with the wolf and the bear, can help us mitigate climate change. And these are opportunities to go out and research what they can do for us to mitigate climate change. The dark area is where cougar are known to exist now, but it's becoming fragile and fractured due to human impact and climate change. Next slide, please. This is Oregon. Now, this is from ODF&W. It is kind of a complicated map to understand with the color coding, but it indicates where cougar might be found in Oregon. And ODFW claims that we are supposed to have over 6,000 cougar in Oregon. Now, in the top right-hand corner, you see that dark line, squiggly line going everywhere. That is the preferred territory where ODFW would like to keep cougar in Oregon. Now, and I'm going to talk about why that is not a good management plan and is not feasible. Currently, ODFW says we have 6,000 cougar. They want to cap it at 3,000, but they've skewed the numbers, and we will talk about that in a moment. Next slide, please. This is Cougar Territory, and I might be talking I might be preaching to the choir here for a lot of you, I'm certain, but some people, if you don't know this is important for you to understand. This is the types of Cougar Territory. We're going to talk about the types first. They are called metapopulations, which are ecosystems where cougar inhabit. So the whole state of Oregon is a metapopulation, okay? They are comprised of source and sink cougar populations. A source population is a positive population growth. That means cougar are able to develop their social development, their subadult and genetic integrity. And they live in an ecosystem that's fully functioning to be able to do this. They're living in an ecosystem that does not have as many roads or no roads or human involvement. In 1984, ODFW's Cougar Management Plan, 1984-1987, stated not to put roads in to the wilderness because cougar needed to establish territories and it would prevent conflict with humans. So that sounded like a pretty good cougar management plan. They were thinking about the species and the ecology in that plan. Sink populations are the next territory type, and they have an inferior food flow. They lack species diversity, and they lack adequate cover. Now, in the late Dr. John Landry, I recommend reading any of his books. Dr. John Landry stated that before the Euro-Americans inhabited the United States, Americas, that cougar inhabited the riverbanks, wolves inhabited the prairie, and bear inhabited the forest. Those relationships and ecologies and social structures have been shattered with the Euro-Western concepts that have moved in with their invasive species cattle and lifestyle. Now, getting back to the territory map here, these circles, The adult male cougar needs 100 to 400 square miles of territory, which is overlapped by an adult female with kittens by 50 to 300 square miles. Very little overlap because the adult male cougar could kill her kittens due to the social stress being applied to them from a human encroachment being primary ones. The young adult dispersing daughter likes to kind of hang around with her mother, and so she will overlap both the male territory and her mother's territory in about a 50 to 200 square mile ratio. The adult female with no kittens will have a stronger overlap of the adult male cougar territory and also have about a 50 to 200 square mile overlap. The young dispersing is off up to the right. The young adult male dispersing is off to the right, and he can go several hundred miles looking for a new territory. However, if he crosses over the adult cougar's territory, he will be killed by that cougar. I'd like to skip back one slide, please. Now, in that darkened area, that outline darkened area, that is not sufficient for this social structure for the cougar's ecology. So skipping ahead another slide, we come to Oregon's cougar political history. And we'll go quickly over this because I want you to understand again the bigger picture. Where have we been? How did we get here? And is this good for us? 1984 to 1961, Oregon had, well, in 1843, Oregon's provisional government, their very first little government, who met out in the wilderness in the open sky, established wolf and cougar bounties in order to sustain the subsistence farmers who were coming to Oregon until they could financially get on their feet. Now, they did not have a record of how many cougar, elk, or deer inhabited Oregon. So we have no established accounting of how we started this program and what we had to work with. 1912 was when record keeping began. Between 1912 and 1973, 61 years, 6,831 cougar were bountied. They were bountied. This does not include the Federal Wildlife Service's cougar removal or the kitten mortality or natural causes. Okay, now I need to tell you that currently the hound hunters are stating that you need hound dogs to efficiently kill cougar, including ODFW. This is a myth. Because in our historic documents in Oregon, it said that the subsistence farmers and basically the whole of Oregon did not have the luxury of being able to afford hound hunting dogs. Those cougars were bountied without the dogs. Now, so in 1961, the cougar population of 27 cougar were killed in 1961, which indicated to ODFW's kind of sketchy idea then that we had maybe 200 cougar left in the state of Oregon. So the government said, we're going to hand this over to ODFW because we really messed up. ODFW said, okay, now instead of the government paying out bounties, ODFW starts to bring in money. And in 1987 through 2017, 30 years, 11,248 cougar were killed for sports hunting and public safety in Oregon. This does not include kitten mortality. Okay, so in 1998, 52% of Oregonians voted in Measure 18, requiring that we ban the use of hound hunting dogs. Because dogs in 1987, well, in the 60s on up, they started using hound hunting dogs for sport only. So those were stopped in the 1998. And in order to respond to this, ODFW made internal policy changes, enabling them to continue killing cougar in record number. Moreover, they started a hypothetical cougar model population count of 3,000 adult cougar, 3,000 in 1998. Next slide, please. Now, I want to talk a little bit quickly here about expenditures that ODFW's, this is their 2019-2021 expenditures in millions. Now, if you look at the tiny little purple square pie there, and right next to it's a sliver type of gray, that's conservation and habitat resources. The backbone of why we can all exist here in Oregon is marginally funded compared to all the other functions, including, fishing, hunting, cattle ranching. The wildlife management section, the big green pie, and the admin section, the big blue pie, are where cougar are managed and funded. So they're managed to kill for sports. They're managed to kill for keeping them away from elk or deer, and they're managed to protect livestock. Okay, so this is out of skew. This is not sustainable for Oregon's ecology. The biggest pie, should be habitat, resources, and conservation combined. And that would include a sustainable management program for Oregon's cougar. So next slide, please. This is a quick showing of every square box here for when a cougar sighting is reported in Oregon. Every square box is money spent. Whether it's a cougar or a dog or a house cat, this gear, this mechanism is activated, and every square box is money. I asked ODFW, how much does it cost per cougar sighting? They did not know. How much does it cost for the year? They did not know. And, they said, well, maybe it comes out of the general fund, maybe it comes out of here. They would not qualify what we, the taxpayers, what we Oregonians are spending for this. Because this has consequences not only in what we are spending in our tax dollars, but our social, economic, and environmental well-being is tied up in this. It's directly related. Okay, next slide, please. This is deer population estimates in Oregon. Now, this was 2016. The numbers have gone up. Over 250,000 deer are in Oregon. Actually, my numbers could be wrong. It could be quite a bit more. And I am looking here. Yeah, it is quite a bit more now since then. The numbers have gone up several 100,000. But you'll notice on the Willamette Valley to the Coast Range, the deer are so prolific, they can't even count them. So we have, and this is good. Is this good for Oregon or not? Did we have this many deer in Oregon when we did the bounties, when we first started out in 1843? How many deer did we have? Is this good for Oregon's ecosystems or not? Can it sustain this or not? We really don't know. And it doesn't appear that the ecologies are able to sustain this. Bear in mind, we now have a mega drought coming through almost all of Oregon on top of this. Erupted ungulate populations, unnatural erupted ungulate populations. The elk estimate populations are between 80,000 and 100,000 populations here in Oregon. Was that what we started out with in 1843? Was that the prey ratio with cougar? We have no understanding of what we've altered in this ecosystem with our management of programs. We are only focusing on making sports money and cattle industry. We're not looking at the bigger picture. Is that sustainable? Is that really working long-term for Oregon and the well-being of everyone, socially, economically, and environmentally? Is that the best choice for the greater good for the greater part of the masses? All right, this next slide, please, is of Oregon's cattle industry. Next slide. Hello, there we go. The next slide is Oregon's cattle industry. Of course, this shows the whole Northwest. Oregon, however, has 2 million cattle, invasive species cattle, along with the erupted numbers of elk and deer, and the suppressed numbers of cougar, because cougar numbers will respond to the prey ratio. That's natural, because they're trying to create a balance in the ecosystem, keep that ecosystem livable for everybody. And then we also have approximately 250,000 invasive species sheep. Next slide, please. Okay, now policy making, the Euro-Western concept of policy making always relies on the benefit cost analysis for which determine the greatest good for the greater part of the masses. It does not include the ecosystem services and functions, species diversity, or species sustainability. Now, so because of that, conservation organizations came together and they said, we have to create a value system for the ecosystem services, ecosystem functions, and the species diversity. We have to put an identity of value on it that the human nature can understand. So they did a very good job of this. They developed use valuation, which relates to regulating services as it relates to human well-being. They created option valuations, which are provisioning services as they relate to human well-being socially. And use valuation talks about the economy for human well-being. Option values talks about the social for human well-being. Non-use and passive use valuations talk about bequesting and existence, and these involve the environmental well-being. This is not just the wild wilderness. This is also your home and your water and your air and livability. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about these because it's important to understand what they are. I want to talk first about non-use and passive use valuations, which are bequest and existence. This ties in every person who lives in the city or anyone who will not ever get out in the wilderness, maybe never see a cougar, maybe never see a stream or a lake, but those still benefit you. Their existence still benefits you and it still matters. And to a lot of people, it matters much to them that they exist, whether they ever see them or not. So this is the willingness to pay for keeping these established. What are we willing to give up? What are the hunters willing to give up? If they reduce their hunting quotas, if they have better management plans to help sustain more viable cougar populations, they would actually have better species to hunt. And I'm vegan. I really don't like to talk about that stuff, but this is value system. If the hunters were willing to pay for less hunting and less environmental destruction, if RV people were willing to remove their vehicles from the wilderness, this would benefit the greater good for the greater part of the masses in many ways. So these are the eco services, the eco benefits the cougar also offer are tied up into this because cougar do mitigate Lyme disease. And Lyme disease is not out there in the wilderness. It is in your backyard and in your home because ticks travel. You may never see a cougar, but you probably will see a tick. And it could be a Lyme disease tick in your lifetime. So these are very important. Protecting these interconnected communities protects your well-being. Now, option values are social values, and they're provisioning services. They're preserving the integrity of ecosystems for future generations, which overlaps the environmental concerns. But this, again, involves ensuring that you have clean water, clean air, forests, and all those provisioning services, and making the changes to ensure that we have these established. So next is the use valuations, which are the regulating services. Again, and this impacts us economically. We're going to talk a little bit about this. Cougars mitigate Lyme disease, which is a $1 billion economic opportunity loss annually in Oregon. And when you look at the medical records of Lyme disease and you compare the economic losses, it's phenomenal. But then you go to ODF and W and you compare the cougar harvest zones. And it's astonishing how they relate, how they synchronize with Lyme disease in humans in Oregon. And this is very important. This is an opportunity for further research work along with how cougar mitigate climate change, because these are regulating tools that indigenous cultures bestowed 86 names to for a reason. And we need to understand that community and understand those words because words are powerful. They are powerful. They design how you live your life, how you design your communities, your policies, who we are as a culture and who our character is as a culture and as individuals. Words are powerful. They design perspectives and perspectives move the masses. Now, they also, we are all in the middle of a pandemic right now. That was established because of our relationship to the ecosystems and the animals maybe was not very sustainable or healthy for the three tiers of human well-being, socially, economically, and environmentally. And we can all relate to that with COVID and its establishment in the wildlife kingdom and our lack of consideration for that established kingdom. Now, the next thing is, Lyme disease has entered our ecology now, our human species. And things like chronic wasting disease are not too far away from doing the same. So we need to understand this relationship and how it impacts humans' sustainability economically, social, and environmentally. And we are experiencing it right now with COVID. And those who have Lyme disease also understand this. Next slide, please. Words. Words. These are indigenous words. This is their book. This is their story to us now. These are the cultures that established those 86 names. And you will notice in this, look closely, well, that's a cougar hunting with two humans, a shared food source. Remarkable. There are many Native American stories of shared existence with the cougar. In fact, cougar are the only species known, if taken young enough from the wild, can be immediately domesticated. And which is a problem nowadays because of the black markets and wildlife trafficking. So I'm very excited of having this connectivity, because the next slide, please, talks about the cougar's magic, in my opinion, the cougar's power in our lives. We are still connected to the umbilical cord of that cougar, socially, economically, and environmentally, because thousands of years later, in a new communication tool by the same species, humans, cougar are mentioned on the front page of the National Geographic and in the covers of the pages. And I still tear up about this. Is a beloved story of California's P22. An amazing gift to humanity was California's Cougar P22. And so it's important to understand the magic this cougar has done for California. It shifted California economically, socially, and environmentally. It has tilted California towards education, towards compassion, towards willingness to coexist with the cougar and willingness to sacrifice for better ecologies and ecosystems. It has been phenomenal to watch. Next slide, please. This is my favorite name out of all the 86 names, is Kowi-Ishtu, Cat of God. And by the way, I already have the license plate, so boom, done, can't have it. And so the next slide, please. I want to talk about this. I had fun doing this. Simple things sometimes are so magic. And I actually did this and included in my thesis. I compared words, because words are powerful. I compared the words socially, economically, and ecosystems for the three peers for human well-being. I took those words, titles, and then I subtitled underneath them words that mattered, words that describe important elements of those three tiers. And I took the three cougar management plans, Washington, Californians, and Oregons. And by the way, I discovered California is so cool, they don't even have a cougar management plan. And California is a bigger state than Oregon. They have more cougar, more people, more wildlife, less cougar conflict, less money spent on cougar conflict. They are really a smart group of people, folks. Yeah. And they don't have a cougar management plan. And I says, I can't imagine. And so I called them up. I said, hey, are you just not posting your cougar management plan on that? He says, oh no, the people have chosen education over the management plan for their cougar. They want to understand how to coexist with this cougar. Phenomenal. The university stepped right up, and they have had some incredible research work going on. And that is the most important thing for human well-being, is connecting with these cougars through the education. Was ecstatic when I saw that. And Washington State is beginning to reflect a little bit of this. They're watching because, hey, it pays off financially. It pays off for human well-being, and it pays off for the ecologies. The only areas where California has issues is where it's been fractured. And they're working on that now with wildlife overpasses on the freeways, which is phenomenal. Okay, I'm just going to talk in the social area about coexisting and education, and you can go back to the slide later and take a look at them, and go get these management plans yourself and count the words in them. Count the words that are important to you and see how often they're used, because it'll tell you what that management plan really, really stands for. And so in education, coexisting, it's mentioned 28 times in the Washington Cougar Management Plan. Of course, in California, that is the plan. And coexisting is mentioned 0 in Oregon. 0. Now, education is mentioned 193 times in the Washington Cougar Management Plan. They're stepping up to the bat. Oregon, 27 times. And it's not about educating yourself. It's understanding the cougar, what to do if you see a cougar, but it's not talking about the 3 tiers of well-being: social, economic, and environmental well-being. Doesn't talk about that at all, in fact. And there's a lot of fascinating things to look at here, but ultimately, ODFW's Cougar Management Plan is a livestock management plan. It is not a cougar management plan. It doesn't mention anything of sustainability for Oregon's cougar and coexisting at all. It's a livestock, sports ungulate management plan and nothing more. All right, next slide, please. Now, talking more about words. Yeah, talking more about words has just been really wonderful. I feel really bad. Okay, next slide. I can't manage it from my end, otherwise I would be. This is like, oops, I feel like a mean person. But anyway, this is kind of interesting. Yeah, you're there. Okay. This is really interesting. I did a further analysis, and and I told you all those little square boxes every time you see a cougar is what we spend here in Oregon. It's phenomenal. All right. Now, we have, of course, ODFW added on public safety kills, which costs quite a bit of money when we do kill a cougar here in Oregon, a lot of taxpayer money, which I also could not find out from ODFW, but I know it's tens of thousands, folks. So now we go and we look at the California incident reports and we compare them to Oregon's cougar incident reports. Now, I need to say something here. They have 2 different words to describe these encounters with cougar. California uses incident. Oregon uses conflict. And tell me, what word would you rather live with in a management plan in your workplace or in your home? I think I'd rather have incident than conflict. And words are very powerful. They shape our minds and how we think and perceive our world around us. And so California has incidences, Oregon has conflict. And between the years of 2009 and 2013, Oregon reported 739 incidents. Out of all those reports, they determined that 739 were incidents. Excuse me, that's California. Lost my mind. COVID mind. The COVID mind. California had 739 incidences, okay? Because I'm going, why did that number change to Oregon? 739 incidences and 20 public safety kills, okay? That is a very low incidence considering the population of people, cougars, livestock, the size of the state, everything. That's very little money spent compared to Oregon. So you look at Oregon, has 2,189 cougar conflicts. 2,189. And they have 149 public safety kills. That is a boatload of money, folks, that we are spending that we do not have to spend at all. At all. We could adopt California's Cougar Management Plan and we'd all be better off financially, socially, and environmentally. And we'd all be healthier because we probably wouldn't have as much Lyme disease in Oregon. And we probably could mitigate this mega drought better. It's a strong possibility for that, and climate change. These are, we could go to the universities of California who've been researching now for many years the relationship with cougar to understand this. We could go to the indigenous tribes to understand this. We have the information still to do better. Next slide, please. And this kind of break the monotony of seeing slides. This is a Florida mother puma cougar and her kitten. And notice the spots on the kitten. Kittens are born with their eyes shut, very vulnerable. When their eyes open, they're blue. And they are very vulnerable for a few weeks before they come out with their mother. But they have spots until they're 6 months old. They lose their spots at 6 months. And in Oregon, we're killing a lot of kittens because they don't know if they're adults or not. When the hunter goes out there, it's hunting fever, and he'll just kill. He can't tell if that's a female lactating cougar either. It's very difficult to tell. So, and if you notice, the adult cougar still has some spots on her. So, and I can't speak to that. You'd have to ask, Florida about that, but that sure seems like a young mother cougar. She still has indications of some pattern on her coat. But normally, cougars disperse when they are approximately 2 years old, 18 months, 2 years old. They disperse from their mother, the males and the females. And we talked about that territory earlier, but they do disperse at that time. And then the adult female mother can become impregnated again. With the social structures being crunched into these tiny areas in Oregon, a lot of the cougar kittens are being killed by adult males so they can prematurely impregnate the female again. So the social structures are being really sabotaged in Oregon. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the slide of cougar population numbers being, the age ratios being suppressed. Well, I'll mention it now in case I forget, but normally cougars live to be about 10 years old in the wilderness. In Oregon, it's rare to find one more than 5 years old. Next slide, please. Another cougar kitten with blue eyes. And I'm going to start talking at this point about ODFW, stating they have 6,000 cougar. It jumped. When I started ORECAT, we were at 3,000. A couple of months later, all of a sudden we jumped to 6,000. It certainly got my notice back then. What they did at that point was ODFW included the cougar kitten in the mortality count. They included the cougar kittens. And this is problematic because on average across the Western states, according to the late Dr. John Landry, about 50% of the cougars born do not reach the 18-month, 2-year-old dispersal age. Of kittens that do reach dispersal age, 40 to 50% of those born should not be counted in the total population count because they have such a high percentage of mortality. Of those that do disperse out of their natal area, almost 50% of them die within the first year after dispersing. So they're like the Walking Dead cougar. And so, and a lot of them are killed by hunters, actually, and also natural causes, but quite a few of them now are killed by hunters. Of those that survive, about 25% left of those that survive, those are all that is available to replace the adult population in that fractured landscape, with not enough territory to establish suitable source territories. And so there's most of them are becoming sink territories. There's more sink territories than source at this point with our human encroachment. So ODFW's estimate of the total cougar population, including resident adults, kittens, and dispersing animals, consists of approximately 50% of combined kittens and dispersing kittens, 75% of which will die before becoming part of the resident population. Based on the science, there is no reason, quotes Dr. Landry, to think that cougar populations in Oregon are acting any different than any other predator population and are internally controlled by prey availability and social structure. So cougar are responding to the erupted numbers of deer and elk in Oregon, but padding the numbers, the adult numbers with the cougar kitten is just scientifically grievously wrong, financially expensive, and environmentally damaging. You will find on page 52 of their 2017 Cougar Management Plan the true number of cougar we have, which is more or less 33 adult cougar, because the balance are these high ratio of mortality cougar kitten. Cougar kittens are not included in ODFW's mortality counts, only the population counts, which skews management plan of not only cougars, but other species. And an ODFW says they want 3,000 cougar in Oregon, but they don't say if that includes these high mortality kittens. Moreover, last June, and unfortunately I was graduating that day, so I wasn't able to participate in this, ODFW had a revision to page 52 of the 3,300 count. Now, this is very important because to get that count, ODFW collaborated with the Umatilla Native American Reservation and Oregon State University, where I graduated. They collaborated, the three of them, to do a cougar management plan for a couple of years in Oregon. And to do a cougar research evaluation of cougars here in Oregon, Umatilla Native Reservation, Oregon State University, and ODFW, three of them working on this research. And it was determined that we only had 3,300 adult cougar, and they printed it on their page 52 of their 2017 Cougar Management Plan. Now, in June, they say, oh, no, oh my goodness, what did we do? We told the truth. Well, we've got to revise this. And their revision was astounding. They said, well, all across the state of Oregon, cougar kittens and adult kittens are erupting in numbers. Nowhere in the United States is that happening, including Oregon. It is biologically not viable, and it is normative science, which is false science. It is a normative science is a political vested agenda. Political vested agenda. ODFW gets grants to manage the cougars along with state and federal grants, funding. They get wildlife services help. They get all kinds of money coming in to support and dealing with 6,000 cougar. We don't have 6,000 cougar, and it's morally and ethically wrong to do this. It's a political maneuver only. So Oregon's cougars have been exploited. They've been exploited. But in the next slide, they've always been exploited in Oregon. Next slide shows a 1940 document from Federal Wildlife Services. And we'll go back a slide, love. From Federal Wildlife Services showing in Oregon, this is an Oregon cougar taken from the wild. And again, cougar kittens, if taken from the wild young enough, can be immediately domesticated. Immediately domesticated. Native Americans knew this. Immediately domesticated. Next slide. There's the kitten watching its mother being shot and its siblings being shot and torn apart by the hound dogs. And it's carted off by that hunter in Oregon to in the 1940s to who knows what, sold in the black market, sold as pets, sold to a zoo, sold to a zoo, circus, who knows? This still goes on today. It is happening today. The I-5 through Oregon is one of the primary traffic avenues, not only for humans, but for wildlife. And I know this because I've worked on human trafficking issues with the federal government and also with detectives in Portland on other issues that I've done research work on for other people. So, and I know this is a known fact, and this still happens. When I gave presentations throughout rural Oregon before the pandemic and early on in ORECAT, I would have grade school kids, kindergarten kid in particular, run up to me. Oh, I'm so excited. We have a little spotted kitten running around our garage, and the mother looks like a dead carpet draped over the fence. So this is still going on, and we need to have this on the table. ODFW does not handle poaching, does not handle poaching of their own species, deer, elk, anything, or trafficking. It's all the Oregon State Police, and they're not adequately funded to deal with this. And in 2008, I was given a CD document presentation by one of the Oregon State Police who said oftentimes more species are poached than legally hunted here in Oregon. And I also had a state senator, a Republican one of the ones that walked out of the state of Oregon. Every time we have an environmental bill, they walk out, which is horrifying. But he actually sat at one of the Senate hearings, and I've got the video, and I was sitting there, I was absolutely astounded. He says, well, I don't have any more bear on my ranch. The Asians came in and poached them all out. No big deal. It's like, I was floored. So this mentality in Oregon needs to be addressed like California, with education. With education, we can do better. All right, next slide. Here we go. Now, this is from the late Dr. John Landry. We just lost this amazing soul here a few weeks ago. We are incredibly heartbroken across the conservation world to have lost Dr. John Landry. His love and his epiphany were cougar. And he sent this document to Oregon Cougar Action Team, and I'm sharing it with the world because that's where it belongs. And we were talking about, again, the cougar mortality, and I mentioned this to you earlier in the slide. This is where the information came from, was directly from the late Dr. John Landry. Please take this information and share it, because this is applicable across the board, wherever state you are in. In Oregon, it's applicable here as well. So this is for you. And okay, so I talked about this earlier, and he goes into depth more about it and gives you the pie charts. So the next slide, please. Now, again, talking about the regulating controls of cougar with ticks. And this is another slide that all of my sources are there. If you want information where I got my material and my sources, email me at orecat@yahoo.com, and I will send you the material. It needs to be available for everybody. Oregon State University used to call me the barefoot ecologist. And if you Google the barefoot Chinese doctors, you'll find out why. Because if I've got the knowledge, then to me, you should have the knowledge, because that's what I'm here for. I'm not here holding my education and all I know close to my heart. I'm sharing it with everyone. Lyme disease. Lyme disease without cougar, you do get mesopredators who play some impact in our ecologies, but they become quickly nuisance predators, and they don't handle the Lyme disease tick ecology efficiently enough to reduce the Lyme disease exposure for humans. Plus, you end up with coyotes and foxes and deer, maybe where you don't want them. And again, deer and elk are hosts for the Lyme disease. Mice, these little small round dots here, are wood rats. In Oregon, they're the wood rats. Wood rats are across the United States. Back east, it's another smaller rodent that carries, they are the vectors for the nymphs of the Lyme disease. The nymphs prefer the little mice. When they become adults, they prefer the deer, the moose, the elk, and humans. And so you can take a look at these regulating controls with the cougar top-down pressure in the ecosystems, which essentially, if we utilized their ecosystem regulating services, would be from the bottom up towards human well-being. The top-down regulates the mesopredator numbers. Of course, the deer numbers are regulated because cougar keep deer moving. And when the deer are moving, the Lyme disease tick does not have the stabilized environment for which to establish vast numbers of them, because it needs a real big pool of ticks for which Lyme disease to become more prolific with humans. And of course, we have a phenomenal amount of deer here. I bet there's a lot of people listening in Oregon who might even be looking at a deer like I am right now in our backyard. And they carry ticks. And I had a deer pass away on our piece of property. We brought the state police out to find not the state police, but the ODF&W wildlife management to see if it died from a disease. We were picking ticks off each other. We had ticks off that deer. And so they're there. They are really there. And we don't have cougar in this area. But so you can take a look at this, understand the ecology's areas. If you have any questions, I'll answer them the best of my ability. But the better ecology are those regulated by cougar, moving the ungulates, keeping them moving, sanitizing the ecosystems from chronic wasting disease, from Lyme disease, regulating the mesopredators so they're more efficient and they're not in our lives, and regulating exposure to rabies and other population number influenced diseases in wildlife that can transfer to humans. All right, next slide, please. Now, this is indication of one of the graphs I did indicating the relationship between Lyme disease and cougar harvest. The blue numbers in mine, on my here, because I'm looking at them too, is a little skewed. As you can see, the orange numbers are Lyme disease reports, and the blue numbers are cougar mortality. And now it takes about 50 years for trophic cascades to happen. And after the bounty, there was a definitely trophic collapse, and we began to build that back up. But we began to prolifically kill too many cougar, and the ecologies continued to decline, which created more erupted deer and more ecology for the Lyme disease ticks to become prolific. And so the graph indicates the amount of that trophic cascade time. But you can see at about 2000, when we began to prolifically kill more cougar right after Measure 18, we have killed more cougar that we've recorded after Measure 18 that we've recorded in the history of recording in Oregon. So we've started this prolific killing program of cougar. Boom, all of a sudden Lyme disease shoots through the roof. Now you notice the gray dot bar down below? In Oregon, they are resistant to qualifying as many Lyme disease cases as there are. Many Oregonians have to leave Oregon and go to states back east where they are very familiar with Lyme disease to seek help, medical help, and diagnosis. They oftentimes will come back to Oregon and say, Oregon says, well, we're going to throw that diagnosis out because we just don't think it's right. This is politically pressured from the top down policies by the insurance companies to mitigate their losses with the erupted numbers of humans in Oregon getting Lyme disease. And so government plays in on this, as government plays in on cougar management and erupted numbers of deer. And all right, so next slide, please. This shows in years more clearly Lyme disease in Oregon by the years. And if you notice 1998, that's the first real spike in Lyme disease in Oregon, the first major one. They drop a little bit, but then they just went through the roof because it takes that ecology amount of time to respond to what's happening to it. And at this point, we are killing more cougar in those following years from 2003 on to now than we've ever killed in recorded history in Oregon. Okay, next slide. Okay, before the next slide, these are graphic, the next two slides.
Yep.
You may not want to look at them. It is the Lyme, it is a tick impact and what it can do visually, and it's graphic. So those of you who don't want to see the graphic, I suggest you get children away. You need to make a decision about this on your own. So next graph, please. This is a moose in Wisconsin where there are no cougar in the wintertime. This moose, as deer in Oregon are, died because there were so many ticks on it, it bled to death. Those are all ticks. Many of them have Lyme disease. Here's the moose. And it was a research moose. And that's what it died from. It died from the ticks in Wisconsin. They do here in Oregon all the time as well. Elk get ticks. Moose get tick. Deer get tick. They get ticks. People have asked me, do cougar get ticks? And, I have not seen anything on that. That'd be a good thing to find out because as far as I understand, for some reason, they don't. But another thing that cougar do is they can pick out and see when there's an illness in an animal, when the human eye can't identify it. And they'll take that animal down. And it might look like a perfect, healthy animal, but maybe it's got the beginnings of chronic wasting disease. Maybe it's been too many ticks on it and it's beginning to show internally those signs. So next slide, which she went to. Okay.
I just took away that.
Yep. I know. I don't blame you. This is a rather old document of the cougar harvest zones in Oregon. And I put this up there because it was one of the documents I used to collaborate the findings of where is Lyme disease breaking out. And in these kill zones, Lyme disease is some of the hotter spots for Lyme disease in Oregon. However, they are also in Multnomah County. And that's a social reason, a social economic reason of why there's a lot of Lyme disease in Multnomah County. Can you guess? People in Multnomah County have more money than people in southern and eastern Oregon for which to go out and recreate. They carry home a tick on them, on their dog, or in their packing, their bags and their recreational equipment. That tick gets on them, bite. It doesn't take long, 42 hours, I think, of a tick on you somewhere. And they're very small sometimes to see. And you've got Lyme disease. They can get into your bedding, into your backyard, into your neighbor's backyard, carried into the house by their pet cat. These things happen. So that's why I hypothesize, aside from having a lot of woodland in the area, that the Portland metro area has a high incidence of Lyme disease. All right, the next slide is a website that I think would be important for everyone to go to. It's an interactive website where you can click on the counties to find out how much Lyme disease is there. It's very, very, very outdated. I think they're working on funding now to update this. There are organizations in Oregon where you can get more information on what Lyme disease is, the numbers here in Oregon. But you click on those counties and then you compare them to ODFW's historic harvest maps and you realize that they match. And you bear in mind always the amount of time it takes for ecology to deteriorate to create enough sinks of deer and enough sinks of the tick and a reduction in the cougar to mitigate that for this to happen, for it to occur in humans' lives. All right, the next slide. This one's interesting. The benefits of living with or without cougar with regards to just Lyme disease. And of course, again, there's ample opportunity to study what they can do for us for climate change, for tree canopy health, timber health, soil health, water health, drought, mitigating all of that. They did that for us for thousands of years, and Native Americans know this. That's how they got their name. And Native Americans understand this, and this is why they've got 86 names. But and looking at just Lyme disease, social well-being with the cougar is actually high. And I did a public, I went out into the public and I did a quantitative research work in the public where I was sitting there with my little microphone and my table and all my cougar stuff. And I would ask random people at this big, huge fair if they understood what they understood about Lyme disease and cougar mitigating it. And I had specific questions that I would ask. I was thunderstruck. How many hunters said, I think we should protect the cougar more than we are. I think they can mitigate Lyme disease and the ecologies are declining. I did not see that coming. That was phenomenal. And so with that information, I compiled the numbers and came up with this, that for that day in that segment of population, which was a mixed population at this big fair, I had everybody, hunters, housewives, school teachers, professors, hippies, homeless. I had everybody across the board in Oregon. And they said living with cougar is better for social well-being. Our economy does better, so our economy does not decline, and our ecosystems don't decline. And so that's just better for social well-being. But without cougar, we have a high ratio of Lyme disease, and that impacts our social structures in more ways than we really understand, both at an individual level and at a social level. And the economic decline is very high. 1 billion annually of economic opportunity losses collectively in Oregon. And the ecosystem decline is high. So moving on to the next screen. This talks a bit about wildlife watching being a more viable economic source for keeping cougar on the ecosystems and bringing money into Oregon and reducing hunting. Again, looking at the valuations. What are we willing to spend to keep cougar on the ecosystem? What is it that we are willing to change for the 3 valuations? And so this is one tool that we can do. We can encourage wildlife watching. We can set up policies, words in our policies, words in our communities, activities in our communities, educate our children, educate ODFW to invest in wildlife watching, because it will enhance the ecologies. It will help us mitigate aspects of climate change and possibly this mega drought, because we have a different perspective and use of the natural resources than we currently do. And this would include the cougar. Now, we have the wolf out there now too. And another thing in the Cougar Management Plan that they are not talking about is the wolf plan does not state that they kill cougar. And so the wolf plan has to establish a social structure with the cougar and vice versa in the Cougar Management Plan, because they're just going to annihilate cougar on top of what we are already doing. And we don't have a viable ecosystem like we did back in the 60s to regenerate a new cougar population. We have it very fractured. We have bigger sink areas are developing because of the mega drought issues as well. So using tools like wildlife watching as a political and economic and social tool to help mitigate our issues here in Oregon and preserve the cougar is very, very important. It's very, very critical. One of the tools to use. So recommended path forward, change the words. Do a public survey. I got established for approximately $34,000. I set up for ODF&W to do a public survey for $34,000 of how Oregonians feel about coexisting with their cougar. Yes or no? We need to do this. We need to tie the public in, just like I did in my little small research work, quantitative research work with the public. We need to do this for the whole state of Oregon. They need to understand options like California has for their public and their cougar. We need to change the Oregon Revised Statutes, the ORS policy changes that ODFW set up, like this last revision that says kittens and adults are exploding in equal numbers all the way across Oregon. That is not science. That even when they threw their own science out for which to make that policy. That needs to be reversed and corrected. There are a lot of policies that need to be reversed and corrected. I would like to see Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife become the Department of Resilient Ecosystems. I would really like to see that. ODRE. Things like this need to happen. Processes and changes of this capacity are doable. After all, we got to where we are now. We can get someplace else and do better. Now, they would also replace Oregon's Cougar Management Plan, Wolf Management Plan, and Bear Plan into one Apex Predator Management Plan that revolves around ecosystem functions and services. And the hunting and everything else steps back and does not take center stage on this. They will actually benefit long-term with better species to hunt. New Mexico has done this with one of their parks. Very limited hunting. Some of the finest hunting in the world, in the United States at least, is in this park in New Mexico. So now, that's what my suggestion is in the path forward. Oregon Cougar Action Team, what we do, and our little small organization, and we are very grassroots, is that we teach people to be citizen scientists to go out in the public and give PowerPoint presentations with more detail than what I've shared with you. And that's my job, is to empower you to go out there and tell your truth about the cougar. Tell what is actually happening. And we give you the information, the education, and the tools to do this. And it's very exciting to see the epiphany that happens in people's lives. They transfer from passion to epiphany, and they are empowered. And they know how to research and where to go to find the information because they're taught how. They become citizen scientists. Next is I work with indigenous and to rediscover our ancient Native American relationships with the puma, the cougar, catamount. 86 names is powerful. And there's magic and medicine for us now as a modern species in a modern world that's declining. There is healing in those names because there's a reason for them. So this is at Shamawa Indian School here near Salem, where the students collaborated together and we reenacted one of the tribe's cougar stories about human well-being coexisting with cougar. And we had so much fun. Next slide, we went to the state capitol and we did the presentation at the state capitol and it was phenomenal, phenomenal. And this is where our future lies, in our children, in our indigenous knowledge, and in our education. That's where we need to go. That's what Oregon Cougar Action Team supports. And I hope with this presentation that I've inspired questions in you to go and seek more information out about the higher valuations of coexisting with our cougar and what we can do to help facilitate this. In the next slide that I have, of course, another program that we are working on, and we've placed 5 dogs, is that we believe the small subsistence farmer in Oregon is more in tune to their ecosystems and wanting to coexist with the elements, with the predators. So in respect and admiration to Africa's Namibian conservation program, where they have succeeded at coexisting with the cougar, their farming operations, their hunting operations, and their tourism through Dr. Lori Marker, and I suggest you look her up. Her programs are phenomenal. She helped us get started in the early years. But in Namibia's national constitution, they have conservation spelled out. And one of the things they say is this: remember, your farm is part of a larger community, locally, nationally, and internationally. We now know we are part of a global environment. We need to remember that the global market is looking at us. There is very little protection for predators. Therefore, we need to reconsider our thinking and become more scientific and more ethical in our approach to human-wildlife conflict resolution. And that was from the Namibia Cheetah Conservancy Conservation. They can do it. We can do it. And we still have cougar in Oregon. And now we're getting wolves. And we don't have the grizzly anymore, but we've got the bear. So take my hand and let's get out there and do this. Thank you.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for that presentation, Allyson. Let me see here. I do want to say that we do have a couple questions.
Okay.
If you're ready for some questions. So,
and if I can't answer them, I will give them my email and I will get the answer for them.
Awesome. Okay. So I was just adjusting my screen here so I could see. So I have a couple questions from Randy. Let me go to the first one. He first asked, now that everybody has a wildlife camera, are you counting these as incidents? Certainly not as conflicts.
Yes, in Oregon, we do count them as conflicts because written in their policies, if a cougar is seen, it's considered a public safety threat. Not so, I don't think, in California, but I can ask them and find out. I don't know if they do or not. But it is interesting that the more cameras we get out there, the more we realize that cougar have been in our lives for hundreds of years and we didn't even know it. They've been walking by your front door for a very long time.
Exactly. And so is there a way for people to report in Oregon, like if they see, they probably don't want to do this publicly, but is there a safe place to report if they see a mountain lion on their property through their game cameras? So conservationists
The
can
only avenue
study.
they have, right. Unfortunately, we don't have the educational foundation that California does, where parties can report and give this information for research and study. All we have are ODF and W and their kill program. And, what we need to do is work collectively to get an education program, a research program where people can go and give these videos to for research work. ODFW will just take it and come in and kill the cougar. And that's it. That's they are paid to do that. They get grants to do that. They have the artificial population model count to get a lot of money to do that. They've exploited the kittens' lives to do that. It's very sad.
That is very sad.
Very sad.
Yeah. So I hope we can make change, definitely. So I also have a question. Did you imply that wolf populations do not exist with cougar populations?
Wolf and bear and cougar, going back to the late Dr. John Landre's research, bear used to inhabit the forest. Wolves inhabited the prairie, and cougar actually inhabited all the stream banks. And because if cougar went out in the prairie, the wolves would kill him. And in the woods, grizzly were pretty darn big. They could probably meet a match with a few bear, maybe. But in the river, they were opportunistic killers. And of course, deer and elk would come in to drink, and boom, the cougar would have an easy kill and take it up in a tree and eat it, or into wherever they needed to. In Oregon, we are very grateful for getting our wolf population, but wolves kill cougars. That's the natural thing they do. And what we need to do to ensure an equitable balance and safety and sustainability for both species is to include them both in both management plans, the cougar in the wolf and the wolf in the cougar. But ODFW doesn't have anything sustainable. They mentioned only here, I noticed when they did the revision last June to say, oh, cougar numbers are erupting, so are the kittens, they happen to state, we're trying to put a sustainable ecological plan together for the wolves. At the same time, they're not telling the truth about the population of the cougars. It appears to me they're throwing the cougar under the bus to just coexist and have on the ecosystems the wolf. It's more money. It's more public. People can relate to wolves easier than they can relate to cougars. But we have to change that. We either need one management plan, which would be the best socially, economically, and environmentally for all three apex, the wolf, the cougar, and the bear, or at minimum have them reflected in all three different plans, all three apex predators. Because right now, you've got a wolf plan that is not going to be efficient or viable for the cougar plan, and vice versa. Cougar will kill wolves if they're separated, but definitely wolves pack and will kill the kittens and the cougar. Yeah,
that makes sense. And
go
ahead.
Real quick. Dr. Gay Bradshaw, I'd like you to look her up. She has done amazing research work on PTSD. And a lot of us suffer from PTSD. I have PTSD from surviving a helicopter accident in 1996. But wildlife get PTSD, and cougar have PTSD. We see these unusual incidents where cougar are wandering into communities and they don't belong there. They're stressed. They maybe lost their mother. They're hungry. They're frightened. They've got PTSD. Also, I hate to say this, but a lot of times, again, going back to those pictures of the 1940s where the cougars were being taken and immediately domesticated, some unethical people will take those kittens away and hand feed them, keep them in their garage, whatever. And when it's time for policy making at state legislatures, suddenly we've got a very domesticated cougar wandering around a school somewhere or joining somebody's backyard barbecue. A lot of conservation people do not want to address this, but because cougar, also wander in because they've been orphaned one way or the other. They've been orphaned, but it has to be on the table in today's day and age. It's got to be on the table as part of the issues with managing cougar in our perspective and our words that we use to do so. We have to become more compassionate people. Black Lives Matter to me a lot, but it's a bigger picture than just the human species and anyone's color. It goes back to how we relate and treat the animals and the ecosystems, because that's how we learn to do racism. That's how we became really, a bad part of our nature. So when we address things like abortion or Black Lives Matter, we need to look at the whole bigger picture. You've got to be pro-life for everything and understand everything. For the seeds of that kind of behavior, for abortions or for racism to happen, the seeds came from another part of our relationship with the animals and the ecosystems. It's a brain set that does not turn on and off from how we kill animals to how we treat humans. It's the same neurological path, just like that freeway. The I-5 is the same I-5 for trafficking humans and wildlife. We have to understand the neurological relationship here. And Dr. Jay Bradshaw talks a lot about PTSD in animals. And as a person who has PTSD, I can see where it does relate to human nature and us, not only as individuals, but as a culture. Right now, we're an entire culture on PTSD with COVID. So probably didn't expect me to mention that, but I think it's important. If we're going to stop killing in one area, we have to learn what taught us to kill that way to begin with. And it starts with the animals and the ecosystems and how we've exploited and used them. So the bigger picture always. Where have we been? How did we get there? And is that good for us?
Right.
In everything.
Yep. We need to keep that in perspective always. So I know we've ran over quite a bit for time, but Randy also commented that Dr. Lori Marker actually came from Winston, Oregon. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, she did. Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So she's an Oregonian.
She was one of my first board members and very inspiring and inspirational for us and gave us some great direction to follow. And of course, she was somebody that I followed through my master's degree. And I looked at her research work very closely and her social, economic, and environmental contributions to the Namibia national, their documents that they established a culture on, their declarations. And she's the one that got the conservation into that. And that is remarkable. We need people like that here. I need people to be on my board, people to be with me, to step together, united, all of us, even people who have more expertise. There are a lot of them out there than I do, to step forward and let's get that conservation, not only into ODFW's management plans, but into our state policies, where we are actually pivoting off the ecosystem services and functions and the well-being of the apex predators that has sustained us for thousands of years. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we need to apply all this to anybody who's listening in any state. And I really want people to go to ORECAT.org and take a look at the work that Allyson's doing and her group there, and to, contribute if you can, volunteer in your own state somewhere to change the words and create this momentum to protect our animals.
If we can inspire you to start a not-for-profit from no money, no skills, and no expertise, and keep it going, I will show you how to do that. Because, I am not the big conservationist folks that we are all familiar with, and a lot of people contribute to, but I do a lot of good work educating people, going to state legislature, giving them materials and education. It matters. Every little bit matters of what you do, what I do, and all the conservation groups do. And can you imagine if all the conservation groups united together and included everybody, how powerful and successful we would be mitigating climate change and all the problems that we have?
Definitely. And Amanda asks, and this is a good question for everybody, how can I get involved? She has no experience, just interest and passion, it sounds like. So,
well, she's perfect.
Yeah.
You may email me. We are very grassroots. I have no idea what state that you are living in, but if you're in Oregon, I can help you get going to establish opportunity to reach out to your public through church, through neighborhood watch programs. I can help you get prepped to do a presentation. And if I'm close enough, because COVID, I'm staying kind of close to home, I'm wearing my mask and everything, I can be there to help you. As you saw in my slide, I don't like to take center stage. It's not about me. I don't get paid anything on ORECAT or anything to be a registered lobbyist at all. I don't want to be. It's all about empowering the people to go out there and give the presentation themselves. And it's about empowering the people with material and research work that I've done and more that they can do, and where to go find those resources so they can become empowered. It's, and if I get donations for ORECAT, that's fantastic, because it enables me then to continue helping others become empowered to become citizen scientists and to educate their community. And that's what I'm about.
Yay. And Amanda said that she's in Michigan, and I'm a Michigander myself, Amanda, so I'm from Traverse City.
I can get her connected with people in Michigan. I can get material emailed to her. Thrilled to have happy, very happy to help her.
Yeah, so I hope you two connect. Yeah, an email.
I'll focus on Oregon's Cougar, but if people need help outside the state of Oregon, I will be there for you, because Cougar cross state boundaries all the time.
Oh yeah. And I know in Michigan for a fact they're showing up more and more in lower Michigan, even in the lower peninsula. So
now, an interesting thing, I've spoken over the years to almost every single wildlife department throughout the United States. And in the east, when a cougar shows up, I've asked them, people are seeing cougar, what could this be? He says, well, a lot of people have pets for cougar, like maybe the ones trafficked out of Oregon possibly, but they have these pets. And when they start clawing the walls like a cat scratch post or the sofa, they suddenly realize that, well, maybe this wasn't a good idea. I'll just release them in the wilderness. And as far as I'm concerned, that's really good.
Yeah.
We need more cougar in their wilderness, whether they were pets at one time or not. And I'm probably going to get thrown off the net for this and get a call.
Somebody's going to have a comment.
I know, but we need to get cougar in the East Coast, because you guys have Lyme disease badly. You've got failed ecosystems. So there are people back east now who are there working hard to try to figure out how to get cougar on the East Coast. Scientists, and I can connect her with them because they are friends of mine. Dr. John Landre very specifically tried to get cougar back on the East Coast and has left a legacy of people for her to work with.
Terrific. Yeah. That would be great, I hope. And Amanda, I think you can email her at ORECAT at yahoo.com. And I put the email in the comments section as well. So
I'll get her today. She emails me today. By tonight, I'll have her connected with people.
Nice. Yeah, I know a bunch of wolf researchers as well in Wisconsin and northern Michigan as well on the carnivore coexistence lab. And they're connected with Michigan Tech University. So, she mentioned there's a lot of ticks in Michigan, and there definitely is. So a lot of deer. Yeah. So, but I hope you guys all connect and stay in touch and keep updated with what's happening with cougars in your state and with ORECAT. And definitely take a look at the wonderful work Allyson is doing. So, and also check out her artwork. It's beautiful. So,
yeah, actually, I'm selling some of my artwork at, and I'll give you that link. I didn't think about that. I'm selling some of my artwork to help support ORECAT, and it's on redbubble.com. And you type in my name, Allyson Miller, Allyson, Miller, Miller. And my Art of the Trophic Cascades will pop up. Cougar that you just saw, you can get on a shower curtain. You can get it on a bag. You can get it on bedding. You can get it on clothing or a water bottle. And all that money that I make goes to ORECAT. And I apologize. I just started that a couple of weeks ago, so it didn't cross my mind, to get it. I've been working on COVID vaccines and things like that, and doing a little bit of research work on that. So I've had a lot of irons in the fire, but I will give you that information and people can go there. I've got wolf, I've got bear there, cougar, I've got all kinds of wildlife And all of the items have started selling across the United States, so they're real popular. And I've only been up a couple of weeks.
Oh, yay. Congratulations. That's terrific. Yeah, and I'll post all these in the comments, or you can go in if I missed any websites or links, you can give to
Yeah,
people in the comments as well. So
Redbubble, redbubble.com, and then type in Allyson Miller, and my items will show up. And you click on my items, you can click on my link, and all my items are there. Yeah,
terrific.
I mean, it was really cool. I thought, oh my gosh, in 1 hour of posting my artwork, I'm selling shower curtains and clothing. Who knew?
That would make a great shower curtain, I think, with the cougar coming down. That's
It
awesome.
does. It
Yeah.
really does. Yeah.
Well, gosh. Well, thank you everybody for listening today. And oh, Randy said we need more fun socks. Yes, we do. You need to get a
Well,
cougar on socks. Yeah.
I'll go to the site and I'll specifically put the cougar on some socks for you, Randy. Then you
Awesome.
can buy them at my art site.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know Redbubble did socks. That's great.
Oh, they have
So
socks, they have baggage, they have backpacks, they have water bottles. I can look at bath mats, they have clothing, they have
wow.
scarves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll check it
Yeah,
out.
yeah, it was really a lot of fun.
Well, thank you, everyone. I know we went over but it was a very interesting presentation, and it's very important. I'm so happy that you were able to do this, and we got together to get the word out. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you
thank
all.
you.
Blessings to everybody.
Yeah,
And may God bless you all big, every one of you.
yeah. Thank you, and you too. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye.
You can stay on. Yeah.